This is Eric Marcus, and I have some very sad news to share. Kay Lahusen, one of the towering figures of the LGBTQ civil rights movement, died yesterday, May 26th, 2021. She was 91 years old. Kay was a journalist who captured key moments of the 1960s and 70s movement on film, and along with her life partner, Barbara Gittings, helped change the course of our history. Over 2 visits in the spring and winter of 1989, I interviewed Barbara and Kay for 5 hours in their cozy living room in Philadelphia. And over the years, Kay became a dear friend and mentor to me. Barbara first found her way into the movement in the mid-1950s, and Kay found Barbara in 1961. Together, they devoted most of their lives to the cause. Making Gay History listeners met Kay and Barbara for the first time in the fall of 2016, in our debut season. I wanted to share that interview with you again, to hear Barbara and Kay finishing each other's sentences, a pair of happy warriors, which is exactly how I choose to remember them both.
Interview with Barbara Gittings and Kay Tobin Lahusen, Wednesday, May 17th, 1989, at the home of Barbara and Kay in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Interviewer is Eric Marcus, tape 1, side 1.
Kay? Kay?
Yeah, what?
I need some coffee.
I'm making right now.
And the fruit we should get out that's on the front porch.
I want to ask you about, I'll Save Americans.
Bring us some blue bowls.
I'll Save Americans for Gay Rights.
Ah, yes. Bring out the fruit bowl from the... And there are a couple of knives I had out. Take care of your whistling. It never fails. I'm a musical person. I want a whistling kettle. I get a shrieking kettle.
We have a harmonic kettle.
You do? What does it do?
It's
Westminster chimes?
It's frightening. It's off key.
When did the two of you first meet?
1961. Mm-hmm. At a picnic in Rhode Island, whose purpose was to pull together some women to try to start a Daughters of Bilitis chapter in the New England area.
Do you remember what you felt the first time you saw Barbara?
The first time I saw her, no, I thought she was a very interesting person. I was quite taken with her.
And you?
And I was taken with her. I happened to answer the door when she rang the bell for this picnic, and I was very taken because this was not at all what I had expected.
She expected some mousy little old lady, I think, to turn up when I turned up.
Because I knew that she worked for the Christian Science Monitor, and my stereotypes were such that I expected this rather mousy, dour type of person, and she was everything, anything but when she turned up at the door. You know, bright, cheerful colors and red hair and just awfully attractive. And we started talking and jabbering away.
And this was, you were coming from where at that time? You were visiting from what city?
Well, I lived in Boston.
I wrote to all of the women on DOB's mailing list who were within a 100-mile radius of Rhode Island and invited them to try to start a chapter up there.
That was a fortuitous invitation.
Yes, very much so. Brought her into my life.
Well, in those days, Eric, you have to realize that there were 5 people who might have been possible for the Rhode Island chapter. I mean, it was nothing. It was just a
I think we had
people.
all of 12 or 15 people at this picnic, and that was a big turnout.
Really?
A really big turnout in those days.
Was it that many?
I think it was about that.
What kinds of people came to the picnic?
Well, we were certainly a motley crew in those days.
Were there married women who came? Or?
Married women? Possible. Nobody stands out in my memory from that particular
Marge and
time.
her hopeless love for Jan. Jan didn't reciprocate. And then an older woman who wasn't with anyone, but she told Barbara to go after me. I was a cute little package. Which really ticked me off.
Oh, yes. It's been a standing joke with us ever since.
But frankly, Eric, in the beginning days of the movement, I'll tell you, the people who turned up were by and large pretty oddball. You know, because in the early movement, it was such an unpopular thing to do. When most gay people were trying to blend in and pass.
You say you have to be a little...
Yes, you had to be a little bit unconventional to be willing to come out to meetings of a group like that.
And you had to have some reason to want a crusade, in spite of whatever it might cost you.
But you started in what?
What got me started in the movement was I found in 1953 or so a book called The Homosexual in America, A Subjective Approach by Donald Webster Corey. His book was very much a call to arms. He was saying that we ought to be working to gain our equality and our civil rights. So I met him and found out from him that there were organizations of homosexual people.
Was that a stunning revelation?
Yes, I didn't realize that there were such groups.
We're using the term of the day, homosexual.
Not gay.
Right.
Gay didn't come until the late 60s.
Was
So we
lesbian
used,
used at the time?
Mm-hmm.
yes, but not as much.
Well, it was in the statement of purpose of DOB, honey. Lesbian.
The variant.
Oh, the variant. That
The
was
variant. They didn't call her lesbian at all. They called her the variant. Never.
Oh, yeah.
Never.
I forgot that.
The variant.
But anyway, I found out from Corey about the existence of an organization called One Incorporated in Los Angeles. Lo and behold, the next vacation that I had, I arranged to take a plane out to Los Angeles. And they told me about the Mattachine Society in San Francisco. So I hopped another plane and went up to San Francisco and talked to them. And they told me about the Daughters of Bilitis, which had formed a year ago and was about to start a magazine.
It was founded by...
8 women, including Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon. I did accept an invitation to come to a meeting, and then I found myself in a living room in a normal social setting with 12 other lesbians, and it was a marvelous experience. And I just sat there sort of reveling in the company. It wasn't a bar setting. These were nice women, and it made a big difference. But I didn't actually join Daughters of Bilitis until 2 years later in 1958.
So 58, you decided, what made you decide?
I was invited by Del and Phyllis in San Francisco to help start a New York chapter. I guess they had sized me up as someone who'd be willing to take the bit and run a little.
How many women in the New York chapter when you started out?
Official members, you might have had 10.
In all of New York City?
Official members, yes, but a lot more turned up for the social events, the
30,
public lectures.
35 if we were lucky.
That was a lot.
That was a lot.
That was a lot for an invisible people at a time when you could hardly poke your nose out.
Daughters of Bilitis didn't have big public lectures. Mattachine did. But we members of Daughters of Bilitis would go.
And sometimes we would co-sponsor. So we'd sort of hitch with Mattachine's greater strength to get our name onto something.
And it was usually a lecture on the law and changing the law.
Or on changing homosexuality.
Or it was some psychotherapist.
Yeah,
shrink.
Some shrink looking for clients or to cure, usually.
Or a gay therapist who wasn't out and who just got up and gave an academic paper on.
Or there were
Fritz. What did he always used to talk about? Monkeys and things, homosexuality and animals or something.
These lectures were really excuses
to
at
get
which,
together.
Yes, to get together and to let people come out a little bit. The content of the lecture really didn't matter that much. We really needed the recognition that we got from these people who were names in law and ministry and the mental health profession. They had a credential and they were willing to come and address a meeting of ours instead of ignoring us entirely. That was important.
So just by coming?
Just by coming and recognizing our existence and our being a legitimate audience, that gave us a boost.
Most gay people in New York who had any kind of income were going to the therapist.
What did the therapist tell them at this time?
Usually trying to cure them.
Fix them.
Mm-hmm. You see, I decided at 18 I was right and the world was wrong. But the people who were in New York were in that intellectual stew pot there, and the going theory at the time was that you were sick and you should go to the doctor and get turned around, deep analysis, find out what went wrong in your childhood and so forth. Not too many people just... thought for themselves and thought, this is a crock of shit.
But anyway, we'd have these events, and then Daughters of Bilitis had its own socials and what were called Gab and Java sessions. Literally talk and coffee, and there was a topic for a discussion in that evening. Topics like telling your parents, going to the therapist, legal issues, legal problems, whatever was the going.
Should lesbians wear skirts?
Oh yeah, acceptance by the world at large.
Should lesbians wear skirts?
Well, that was
Always
a
a
big
much
thing.
issue,
Yeah.
But Gus would tell endlessly about her therapist and what her therapist said. Therapy was just
Very big.
The overriding thing then. I mean, law reform was secondary in politics. You know,
And yet, I was beginning to feel my crusading oats a little bit. I couldn't help it. And yet I didn't have a very clear sense of what we were doing and why we were doing it. We sort of bumbled along. But where we were going, if you'd asked me, I probably wouldn't have been able to say very clearly.
When did you develop an awareness? So then at this point,
Well,
you met-
Kay was a big help because Kay's got a very, very clear mind and some very definite ideas about the world.
well,
Much
the
more.
Mattachine guys pushed things along. After all, they did a sit-in a bar and demanded to be served.
This was the sip-in that I've interviewed a couple of people on this event.
And that was very important.
Well, and we're moving along, but
And
this
Randy Wicker
coincided.
was the first to picket. He got out and picketed.
Yes, he picketed at Whitehall Induction Center in 1962 or 1963. Yes,
all
and
very
this is
exciting.
beginning to filter through to me that you could do things like
But
that.
I think even before the real activism, Barbara and I were unhappy with the Daughters of Bilitis posture, and
It was a kind of
general
a
philosophy
scolding
was-
teacher attitude.
it was, now you lesbians had better put on a skirt and shape up and hold a job and go to work 9 a.m. to 5.
And make yourselves acceptable
make
to the
yourselves
world, and then you can
acceptable.
expect something of the world in
Right.
return.
And then,
It was the scolding the laggard lesbian.
Right.
And we didn't,
That's
somehow,
right.
it really didn't sit well with us.
it was pointed toward the ne'er-do-wells who would loll around in the gay bar all day long, and
And we didn't know
as
any
if
of those.
as if this was
The majority of us.
the most of us. Whereas the most of us really were in skirts,
Already.
fitting in all too tightly.
Right. With very painfully wearing the
I
mask.
know I did at the Monitor. I was in a skirt every day, fitting in all too tightly. We didn't like it, and we thought it was very demeaning, and we thought it was very inappropriate.
And it seemed to me that at every national convention of Daughters of Bilitis, Kay and I would come up with radical proposals
Right.
that were always voted
Right,
down.
we didn't want the name. We wanted the name
We
of the
wanted
magazine
memberships for
changed.
men. We wanted associate memberships for
right.
men. We wanted to change the name of the magazine. We
See,
wanted to change the composition of the
magazine was
national
called
board.
The Ladder because you were supposed to climb up the ladder
Did you ever see the
and
covers of the
into
first
the
few
human
issues?
race on an okay basis.
It's very badly drawn. The first 6 issues or so had this picture, a ladder, literally, from some kind of a muddy marshland
knows?
with some vaguely humanoid figures down there, and this ladder up into the clouds and the sky. And it was really.
This little lesbian is beginning to climb the ladder, upgrading herself so that she will become an
I think-
okay person instead of a variant who has a poor self-image,
I think-
who doesn't go to work 9 to 5,
Right.
who doesn't hold a regular job, who isn't a participating member of society, as if there weren't thousands of lesbians who were already
Fitting in all too well.
great contributors to society. No
And what they
recognition
needed,
of them.
Right. What they needed was support, help to get the bigots off their backs,
Right.
and ways to meet other lesbians. They didn't need the
scolding.
teaching. They didn't need to be taught. They really didn't need to have to learn that much
Right,
about
the
themselves. But
implications.
education of the variant was one of the big things in Daughters of Bilitis. Well, we were sort of itching under all of this. And yet we stuck with Daughters of Bilitis for several years, especially because DOB was then joining with several other gay groups in the East to form what was called ECHO, East Coast Homophile Organizations. The word homophile was very big in the late 50s and the early 60s.
Homosexual was deemed too clinical, and so they tried to conjure up this word.
Homophile was the
That
word
was
they
out
came
of
up with.
clinical.
It was also supposed to mean that you could be heterosexual and support the organization and belong to it.
The theory was you could make up your own word, but it never did sail.
Anyway, we met Frank
Sort of like
Kameny at
slang.
one of the ECHO conferences.
In the early 60s.
Early 60s. He was fantastic. He'd been discharged. He was an astronomer and
Did
physicist.
you read my chapter on him? I mean,
Yes.
he is so eccentric. You'll have to forgive a lot.
I met him.
He's worth it.
But he was a big influence on me because he had such a clear and compelling vision of what the movement should be doing. And that was that we should be standing up and demanding our full equality and our full rights, and the hell with the sickness issue. They put the label on us. They're the ones that need to justify it. Let them do their justification. We're not going to help them.
The burden of proof is on them. In the absence of valid evidence to the contrary, homosexuality is not disease,
no kind
impairment,
of right
blah, blah.
malfunction, disorder of any kind. It is fully on par with heterosexuality and fully the equal of it. And when he put that forward as a
credo.
Yes, a credo for the movement in 1964. It was the most radical thing that had come down the pipe.
And DOB said, no, we can't take a position on it.
DOB was one of the groups that wouldn't go along with it.
They said, nobody will listen to us. We have to get the professionals to say we're okay.
We can't say
we
it
had
for
better
ourselves.
help them with their research studies and all of that. And once the professionals say we're okay, then the world will accept it. And Frank said, this is rubbish. He said, if we stand up and say we're right, and nobody listens, we will not have lost anything. But if somebody listens, we will have gained something.
Even if it's only one gay person who needs a little
reinforcement.
reinforcement.
Even if it's only the gay people who listen, we will still have gained something. So anyway,
so what happened
we were catapulted into this vigorous intellectual back and forth, where DOB was back in the mire of wanting to upgrade the variant, and we were saying, to hell with this, there's nothing wrong with the variant, it's society.
That's right. That was the shift that Frank helped put into focus for us.
Well, he packaged it.
Yes, he did. And he marketed it. That is, he really pushed for its acceptance by the ECHO affiliate organizations at these ECHO meetings.
Right. And of course, this was a very uneasy alliance because DOB wasn't ready to go along with all this stuff.
Well,
and for one thing, it was the intellectual East versus San Francisco, where they had nice coffee clutches and all that, right? And Florence said, yes, this isn't the kind of subject matter that can be marketed like toothpaste.
And he said,
and Frank said, unfortunately, this can be marketed like toothpaste. I mean, poor DOB, they had never been grabbed by the short hairs and shaken up this way in their lives, these San Francisco ladies.
But what happened was we were editing the Ladder around that time.
Well, Barbara was the editor.
I was the nominal editor. Actually, we both worked on it.
The Ladder.
And Eric, we would go out and would distribute it ourselves. We would go to newsstands. And
to bookstores. Only 2 places in New York would take it. We tried distributors. They wouldn't touch it.
This was a labor of love. You got to realize you're talking to 2 fanatics here.
I mean, we spent our own gas money and our own everything to do this.
I mean, and we were living on a shoestring. I mean, we are like, the little old lady in tennis shoes. To use a sexist phrase, lady. We have a little old lady in tennis shoes here locally who's outside our supermarket handing out her socialist literature all the time. That's us in the gay movement, you know what I mean? Little old ladies in tennis shoes, living on a shoestring, totally fanatics, caught up in a cause.
You're caught up in it, and there's tremendous reward. Sure, there are setbacks, but there's a satisfaction in seeing the accomplishment and seeing the progress forward. For every setback, we've made 3 major strides forward.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
I can't imagine not being gay. What would life have been like? Dull, dismal, decrepit?
Well, Barbara likes to say she loves organizations, and she would have joined the conservation cause or save the wilderness or save the whales or something.
But the gay movement is so much more fun. I've had such a good time.
If it sounds like Barbara and Kay's work on the Ladder was just the warm-up phase of their activism, well, that's because it was. By 1965, they were out on the picket line at the White House and the Pentagon with Frank Kameny for some of the first public protests by gay people. And even those historic protests were just a prelude to what Barbara and Kay did after the Stonewall Uprising. You can hear what they did next in the second episode we produced featuring Kay and Barbara. You can hear that next chapter in Season 2, Episode 8, and we'll link to it in the episode notes. We also had the chance to visit Kay more recently, at the retirement community where she spent the final years of her life. We called that episode Kay's Gay Table because of the monthly gay dinner table that she hosted there. Sarah Birmingham, Making Gay History's founding editor and producer, and I invited ourselves along and recorded a very special bonus episode. It's one of my all-time favorites. You'll find a link to that episode in the notes today, too. I'm so grateful to both Barbara and Kay for making possible the life I live today. And I'm so grateful for the support and encouragement Kay offered every time I called to speak with her. But ever the journalist digging for fresh information, her first words with every conversation were, "What have you got for me?" We passed that question on to you, our Making Gay History listeners, and dozens of you sent in your news for Kay in letters and emails that I shared with her. I'm going to miss that. We're going to miss you terribly, Kay, but we will never forget you. Kay's remains will be placed along with Barbara's in a bench at the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. The inscription reads, "Gay pioneers who spoke truth to power," and then in all caps, "Gay is good." I'm Eric Marcus. This is Making Gay History. So long, until next time.